Hello, it's Alex here, also known as Defaultsound, and today we're going to start the tutorial series with the very first video all about the fundamentals of 3D. And this video is going to be all about what polygons are, how we create them, and how to understand them without any doubts. So, let's start off with some basic familiar concepts that hopefully all of you should know by now. If you're at least 12 years old, you should have done some basic geometry in maths class, and this should be somewhat familiar. So, if you've ever made a graph, you should know about axes. Every graph has an x-axis and a y-axis. And we can see that here. We've got our y-axis that runs up and down here, and our x-axis runs across. As we know, when we plot a graph, we have a point. So we can plot a point somewhere along this graph, and this has a value along each axis. So let's just say, for the sake of example, this is 2, and this is 2. This would have a coordinate of 2. Now, with 3D, let's add an extra dimension. Ooh. We've now got a third axis. In the case of Blender, this third axis now represents the up and down. So, in Blender, the y-axis and the x-axis tend to be either the forward or side axes, and the z-axis is the up and down plane. Now, I would like to point out that various 3D applications tend to change this around. They sort of vary where this 2D plane is orientated. So in Blender, the X and Y are assumed to be the 2D plane, and Z is the depth plane up and down. But many other applications assume the other way, where the Y is the up and down, and the Z is the forward and depth. And this is going to be a bit confusing for some of you, but that's just something to look out for, is that the Y and the Z axes can be switched around depending on the application. So now our point here has 3 values in 3D space. It now has space to move around horizontally, up and down, left and right. And this is the most fundamental aspect of 3D. It's this little point here. Now this little point has a name in 3D applications. It's known as a vertex. Or if we have more than one vertex, we have vertices. So here I now have 2 vertices. Between these vertices, we can assume an edge. So we can connect the two by drawing a line. We now have an edge between these 2 points. Now, at the minute, this is still vectors. There's no polygonal information here. We need to add at least 3 vertices in order to create a face. So the minimum amount of vertices needed to create a face is 3. And what do you get? You get a triangle. And this is the most simplistic way of assuming a 3D model is a triangle. So this triangle has 3 points in space somewhere. So they've all got 3 coordinates in the Z, Y and X axes. And these can be moved around where we want in 3D space. So, what's some interesting things to know about polygons? Well, in a 3D renderer, this polygon has a thing called a face normal. Now, face normal is basically a ray that shoots out from the face to assume the direction of which way the face is facing. So a lot of faces there, but it makes sense. So I'm going to turn on a thing. You don't have to worry about what it is. What it will do is it will cull the back face of the polygon. So there's actually only one direction that the camera needs to render the polygon. So in some games you may have seen, if you go into a model or something, suddenly all the model is invisible, and that's because those faces aren't facing towards the camera, or the face normal is not facing towards the camera. In some applications we can assume double facing, like most 3D modeling applications will have no backface culling, where both faces are rendered on either side. But this is some fundamental aspect to know about, that each face has rays that point out to assume its direction. Also, the vertices have normal directions, so these vertices can also assume different angles, and this is really important later on when we have two faces connected and how those faces shade. So another polygon we can have, or the next most simplistic polygon, is we can have a quad, and a quad essentially is a square. Just one moment for... Okay. So 4 vertices, and connect them together and we get a quad, or a square. Now a quad is probably the most easiest way to create 3D models, and it's the cleanest way to create 3D models. And this is what we'll be using for most of our modeling techniques, is using quads. Anything more than 4 sides is known as an n-gon. Some 3D modeling applications can render n-gons, however within games all polygons end up getting triangulated. What I mean by that is they're connecting, if they're a quad, they get their connecting triangulation, and this is basically the easiest way to render polygons is using triangles, as in the whole under cover of the rendering system the engine's a lot faster at knowing the triangulation of all the vertices and being able to render those polygons to the surface. So some basic things to remember, if it's not too confusing. We have 3 axes that vertices sit in. We can connect those vertices together with edges. With at least 3 vertices we can create the most primitive polygon, and that is a triangle. The best way of working is using quads with 4, so working with squares, and anything more than 4 is considered an n-gon. All faces have their face normal direction, so in this case you can see the face normals are flipped, and eventually you can decide which direction you want the faces to face. And also our vertices also have a direction they face as well. So that's all for this video. I hope that's helped get some fundamental basics into your head, and hopefully it will help you understand the future tutorials in the series and how to approach 3D modeling and how polygons work a bit better. Thanks for watching.